Okay. In the previous session, we have discussed some Linux commands using Ubuntu. So, have you tried installing the Ubuntu virtual machine in the virtual machine operating system? So, those who did it, that's fine. But those who did not do it, try to do and confirm me, because we will be having practical exam in that. If your Ubuntu is working or not working, you have to check and you have to confirm me whether it is fine. If you have any issues, try to send me an email before Monday, before our next class, so that I can continue and give the remaining commands. Okay, please try to install Ubuntu and try those commands which I have given in the previous class. And if you have any questions in that, or maybe problems with installation, we can discuss before our next class on Monday. Okay, so that it should be ready, and your practical exam will be based upon these Linux commands. So you have to be sure about that. Okay, so now today we are going to get into a new lecture. In the theory, we discussed in the previous class about deadlocks. So we try to understand why do we get deadlocks, what is the main concept of deadlock, and we understand that what are all the different conditions for getting the deadlocks, and we have seen the resource allocation graph, and we have seen the solutions for handling the deadlocks. Now we are moving to the lecture of memory, and this concept contains two lectures. Lecture 7 and lecture 8 is about how the operating system manages the memory. So we understand with the basics, first the background about the memory, then how the program and data come into the memory, how operating system handles that, and there are different type of addressing methods that we call it as a logical address or physical address. What it is, I will tell you in the lecture. Then every process needs the memory. Like, when I have to teach, I need a classroom. So how do the operating system allocates the memory to the process? That is called as memory allocation methods. First, we'll understand today the basic method, what it was done. Now, in the current scenario, in the new operating systems or the current operating systems, normally we adopt paging. That is the memory allocation method we are using now. So what do we mean by paging? What do we mean by segmentation? We are going to understand in this lecture. But today I will try to speak about only the background concepts. Maybe I will cover up to this point today. Then paging and segmentation we will see in the next lecture. So two lectures, this lecture and the next lecture, are connected to the memory management. Okay, so let's get into the concept. So first of all, we need to understand the storage hierarchy. How the CPU stores the data, how do the CPU access the data, the storage hierarchy we need to understand. This point you already know, but we need to discuss technically about this. Okay, now we are going to compare these three storages: cache memory, main memory, and the hard disk. Three storages. Okay, so when we compare them, we compare in a two different concepts. One is the way how do the CPU can access the memory, and the second point is what is the size of the memory and what is the cost of the memory and what is the accessing speed. So various points we are going to use to compare between these three memories. I hope in the class everyone know about these three memories. Yes or no? Is there anyone in the class who does not know about these three type of memories in the computer? Everyone knows, right?
Yes.
Everyone, yeah. So because in the computer organization also, you might have discussed about the concepts of memory, cache memory, DMA, all those concepts. Okay, so these are the basic things. In the computer, we have the RAM, main memory, that is our RAM, and the storage is the hard disk, and the cache memory is intermediary between the CPU and the main memory. I hope everyone know the concept of cache memory. CPU stores the information which it regularly access on the cache memory. Why? Because to get the data faster. To get the data faster. So what it does, I hope everyone know, is the discussion there about the cache memory. Okay, so I'll just give you a small, detail about this. So we have CPU, want to access the data from RAM to do the execution of the program or the data. But coming to the RAM and accessing the data will take time. Okay, so because coming to the RAM, reading the data from the RAM and taking back to the CPU and executing here, it's going to take time. CPU is very faster. RAM is little bit slow in comparison to accessing or in comparison to data transfer. CPU is faster, RAM is little bit slow. But we want to balance the speed of the CPU. That's why what we have in the middle, we are going to keep some data from the RAM to this cache memory. Some data in cache memory, and CPU can directly access the cache memory, and cache memory is faster comparing to RAM. So the data which is available on the RAM, we can keep some data which can be regularly accessed by the CPU. We cannot keep everything here. We can keep only part of the data which is regularly used by the CPU or which is frequently used by the user of the computer. So that data will be here. Why we keep it here? To balance the speed of the data reading and to increase the data access time, we keep some information here. So that is cache memory. Maybe in some other courses, you might have discussed about what is cache memory. Okay, so we have now three types of memories. That is, we have cache memory, we have main memory, that is our RAM, and we have the hard disk. Now, what is the comparison between them? Okay, so first thing, this is primary storage. What is primary storage? That can be directly referenced by the CPU. Can be referenced directly by the CPU means CPU can directly read the data, write the data onto main memory and cache memory. That is point number one you need to keep in mind. This is called as a secondary memory. Why we call it as a secondary memory? Because if you want the CPU to read and write the data, it cannot go directly to hard disk. It cannot directly go to the hard disk. What it does, it will bring the data from secondary memory to main memory, write the data here, and after the writing has been completed, send the data back to the hard disk. Means, sorry. So it must be loaded into memory before being referenced. So the data from the hard disk should be stored onto the memory, then only CPU can read and write data directly from here. So that is the concept you need to keep in mind. First point is the referencing method. Main memory or the primary memory can be accessed directly by the CPU. Secondary memory can only access indirectly by the CPU with the help of RAM or the memory. That is one point. Okay, but if it is the case, you might get a question, teacher, if you are going to use main memory every time, why do we need a hard disk? Why do we need a hard disk? Okay, so we know the difference between RAM and the hard disk. Main memory is volatile. Volatile. Anyone remember what is volatile? Anyone remember what is volatile memory? RAM is volatile. We say RAM is volatile. Why? Anyone remember this? Okay, I will ask you a question in another way. When we switch on the computer, when we switch off the computer and switch on the computer, does RAM stores the data in the memory? Is RAM permanent memory? Is RAM permanent memory or temporary memory? What is your answer? The primary memory or the RAM, is it temporary or permanent?
Temporary.
Temporary. It is not going to store anything on the main memory. It is just like that's why we call it as a volatile. What is volatile? When the computer is on, it will store the data and the programs onto the main memory. And when the computer is off, everything is going to be cleared. It's like a new. But in the hard disk, it is not volatile. It is going to store everything. Okay, so that is one point of difference. That's the reason why we need both of them. We need hard disk to store the data permanently. We need main memory to read and write the data and to do processing of the data. We need main memory. But there are some differences between them. When we go from here to there, cache memory, the access is very fast. Main memory, the access is little bit slow. The secondary memory, the access is more slow. So what we need to know, the access time when we go up is increasing. The access speed increases. Cache memory is faster, main memory is little bit slow, and secondary memory is too slow. That is point number one. Okay, so when we go up, the speed increases, the access time also decreases. Means this is faster, this is slower, this is more slower. Okay, but the point here is, you might get a doubt. Teacher, if the cache memory is very faster, why don't we keep everything into cache memory? Why do we need RAM? That is our question, right? I'm telling this is faster, this is slow. Why do we need to have main memory when we have a cache memory which is very fast? The answer is the cost. Cache memory is very expensive. RAM is little bit cheaper, but the hard disk is more cheaper. Means when we go up, speed is okay, but the cost will also increase. Okay, so that's the reason why. What is the capacity of the main memory in our computer? Can someone tell me from your computer? What is the capacity of main memory? I think I asked you this question in the beginning of the course also. What is the capacity of the main memory in our computer, RAM? You can tell from your computer example. What is the RAM of your computer?
4 giga.
4 GB. So we have 4 gigabytes. Or maybe someone may have 8 GB. Or someone may have 12 GB. But if you tell me what is the hard disk of your computer, the hard disk of the computer, what is the size?
1 terabyte.
1 terabyte. If you compare 1 TB, if you compare 1 TB with 4 GB, 4 GB is very small. 1 terabyte is 1000 GB. So see the difference. RAM is very small, but the computer cost is going to increase if you buy different size of RAM. So maybe this will take, for example, I don't know the real prices of the laptops. Okay, so for example, maybe this will take 200 reals. Maybe this will take 250 to 300 reals. Maybe this will take 400 reals plus. The more memory you have, the cost of the laptop is going to be increased. But if you look at the hard disk, in maybe 20 reals, we will get 1 terabyte hard disk. We can buy outside. Or maybe 22 reals, we will get 1 terabyte hard disk. But whereas the RAM, it is very expensive. You can see here, the cost is going to be more when we go up. That's why comparing to RAM and the cache memory may be more expensive. Sometimes computer cannot store or cannot support more cache memory. That's why we need to know this comparison. And the final one, the capacity decreases. When we go up, this is very small. Cache memory is very small. Little bit bigger is RAM. We have seen GBs, but hard disk will be having in 500 GB, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes. It's very big. Okay. But what we need to know from this, we cannot depend on one memory. Every memory has got its own use. Here it is permanent storage. It is very cheap, huge capacity. Here it is faster. It needs for the CPU to do the processing. And if you want to increase the more speed of the computer, we also need the cache memory. That is how the computer works. Directly, CPU cannot access the hard disk. We have the data in the hard disk. It brings the data onto main memory. It does the access. Now that is the main theme of our lecture. How operating system is going to handle 3 different memories when the user is asking to run the program. That is the background now we are going to discuss. Okay, so the program must be brought from the hard disk into memory and placed within the process to process for it to be run. What they are telling here, we need to bring the program and the data from the hard disk into main memory to run. That is the point we need to understand. Main memory and registers are only storage CPU can access directly. It cannot access the hard disk directly. So we need to bring the data. Now there is one concept called memory unit. Memory unit. The memory unit of the computer see only the address where the data is kept so that the CPU can go to the address, read the data, write the data from that particular address. What is address? I will tell you in the coming slides. Just keep this point aside. Okay, and on the CPU, we know we have the registers. Register is again a small unit of memory which is faster than cache memory. Okay, so register access in one CPU clock or less means it is very faster, but main memory can take more cycles, means it will take some time. So to balance between this, I told you in the middle we have the cache memory. I told you this concept already in the previous slide. Cache memory sits between the main memory and the CPU registers so that CPU can access faster with the help of the cache memory. Okay, so this is one point. Also, another point we need to discuss about the protection of the memory. Which process is asking for the memory and how the process is accessing the memory, we need to be very sure about that, because you know the concept here is we have the memory in the system. Imagine this is the memory given to process 1 and process 2. This is, for example, my RAM. Okay, so when process is accessing, okay, let me say this is two parts of the memory. So process 1 wants to access this memory, process 2 wants to access the memory. Okay, imagine that these are now two rooms. Okay, so room 1, this is room 2. Now what we need to ensure, we need to have the protection of the memory. So process 1 is starting to use the memory, second location, third location, fourth location. It cannot use more than this. It is the limit. So these are all the concepts. The operating system has to ensure that operating system is going to protect the memory also. So all these concepts we are going to understand in this lecture, how the program and the data will be kept onto the memory, how do the operating system handles the memory, how the process is going to get the memory, all about that we are going to see in this lecture. That's why this is memory management done by operating system. Okay, now this is what is the main concept we need to understand. So for every process, there will be two concepts, that is the base address and the limit register, base and the limit. Okay, so a pair of base and limit registers define the logical address space of the process. Okay, what do you mean by the base? The base is like starting point. And limit is the end point. So for each process, there will be a starting point and there will be an ending point. So within this only, you can access the address. Okay. So whenever a process, you can see here, if you look at this process, it is starting from this location. Imagine this is the memory. Okay, so for one particular process, the starting point, this is the base. Okay, 300,040 is the starting location, and the limit is only up to this location, 42,000 something. Okay, I will give you a small example. Okay, so instead of big numbers, suppose we have a memory. Okay, and you say you start with 100, you can use only 40 memory locations. That is the limit. Means from 100 to 140 it can use, Above 140, it is not your location. Okay, so that is the base, is the starting point, and the limit, this is now the limit. The limit, how many addresses or how much memory you can use. So for example, I say you can use only 40 locations, not more than that, which means the process can start with 101, 102, 103, 104, 105. It can go only up to 140 because that is the limit of that. It cannot go beyond that. Okay, so what is that? A pair of base and the limit register define the logical address space of the process. CPU must check every memory address access generated in the user mode to be sure it is between the base and the limit for that particular user. Now, for example, this is a user. Okay, the user can use the memory from this location till this location only. It cannot go to the next location. Why? Because this is the limit. Maybe this memory is given to another user. So I am user 1 in this computer now. I can use only this memory. Beyond this, I should not take it. This is not for me. This is for user 2. Okay, that is one idea you need to keep in mind. Base address and the limit registers. Okay, now what we have to do, we need to make a connection between the program, because I am running a program. I am running a program in Java. Okay, when I run the program, what it wants actually to run the program, it needs the memory. It needs the memory. Now we need to make the connection. My program should be stored inside the memory. So this is actually called as address binding. What is address binding? Connecting the logical address. I will tell you what is logical address, physical address, all these concepts. Okay, connecting the program to the memory is called as address binding. Okay, now what we need to understand, the program which we are running, example Java program, must be brought into the memory and placed within a process for it to be run. So when we want to run the program, what we need to do, we need to take this program and we need to keep the program inside the memory. Okay, so collection of process on the disk that are waiting to be brought into the memory for execution, we call it as a input queue. So ignore about this, no need to understand about this point. What they mean to say, there will be a queue of process 1, process 2, process 3, process 4. We need to bring the process onto the main memory so that we can run that particular process. Okay, now what is address? Address represented in different ways in this step. What is that? Address in the program. Okay, address in the program, like we have the memory variables. If you look at the Java program, okay, so we say, is the pointer? Sorry. Okay, so we have the memory variable. Suppose we say int count. When we have a memory variable, we know memory variable means we want a memory in the computer. You remember in Java programming, why do we declare the memory variable? Because we want to store the data. If we say int count, and when we say count is equal to 100, we need to store some information into this memory, which means we need some memory for the count. We need some memory, for example, there is another variable string employee, or suppose we have integer phone number. Okay, so likewise, we have the memory variables. In the program, the addresses are actually symbolic. What do you mean by symbolic? They have some names, count, employee, phone number, or say student ID. So likewise, for us, we don't know what is the background. What we know, I want some memory. For that memory, I am giving a name. Suppose this is the count. That is the name I know. What the compiler does, when we compile the program, compiling in Java, Okay, I ask one question now, and every time I get wrong answer. Every time, not now or not last semester, not before semester. In my whole life, I mean, in the whole history, when I ask this question, I always get a wrong answer. Okay, I want to test you now. When we do compile, what will happen? The Java program. When we do compile, you did Java programming in the previous semesters, introduction to programming and programming. When we do compile, what happens? I want right answer.
Get it the output.
Is it output by compiler, or when we run
No.
the program, we get the output?
When you run and compile.
Yeah, when we run, we get the output. When we do compile, what will happen?
It will save the changes or the code. I
That
write.
will, no.
Get the error or what in the plan.
Okay, now I got three answers. Okay, one, someone said, okay, it is going to run the program. No, running is done by clicking the run button, execute. Okay, so that is point number one. Point number two, someone said it is going to save the program. No, it is not going to save, because saving is completely different. We know that when we click save option to save the program, before compiling it will save it. That is fine, but the purpose of compiling is not saving. Okay, someone said it is going to check the errors. This is the answer. I don't say this is the wrong answer, but always the students tell me this answer only, that when we do compile, it is going to check for the mistakes. Your answer is, I don't say 100% wrong. Your answer is not correct. What do I mean by that? When we do compile, what actually happens? It will change the program which we write in English to object code. What is object code? Machine language. The machine code means I write the program in English. The compiler, it's going to compile, means what? It is going to change the language from the English to the language which the computer can understand. When it is doing that, if there are any mistakes in the program, the compiler will identify the mistakes and tell us that there is a mistake in your program. Okay, what is the point? Now we understand compiling is not to check the mistakes. Compiling is changing the source program into object program. While it is doing that, automatically it is going to check the mistakes. Okay, so why I come to that particular point is, when we compile, okay, when we compile the Java program, our program needs a memory. Our program needs a memory. So what it has to do? Okay, so let me clear. Okay, so when we do the compiling, compiler binds these symbols. What is that symbols? Here we have the memory variables addressed to the relocatable address, such as 14 bytes from the beginning of this module. Means, suppose there are some memory variables, it needs 14 bytes of memory. It says that, okay, this program needs 14 bytes in the computer. Okay, then there will be the linker or the loader, which is going to bind the relocatable address to the absolute address. That is, it will go to the memory. It will go to the memory, and memory, remember, whenever we are going to talk about the memory in this lecture, always remember about RAM. Okay, always remember about RAM. And in RAM, every location of the RAM, contains address. Remember that. Okay, if you ask me where are you now, I say I am in lab K001. That is my address, because in the college, every location is a address. If I ask you where are you, you say I am in my home. This is my address. Okay, in the same way, every location of the RAM contains the address. Why do we need to have the address? Because we need to place the process inside a particular address. That's what we have seen here. You can see this. These numbers are nothing but, these numbers are the address locations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These numbers are the location. You can see in the beginning, it's operating system. From 0 to 256,000, okay, is the location given to the operating system. After that, there is a memory available for the process 1, process 2, process 3, process 4. So every point, every location contains a address. Okay, now what they are telling here, we are putting the program into the memory. When we do that, we need to know where is this program in the memory, means in which address. So that is the example here. Okay, so what it will do, it will take the program, whatever the memory it is required, it will place that memory into that particular program. Okay, so 14 bytes from the beginning of this module, linker or the loader will bind the relocatable address to the absolute address. Absolute address means the address. Absolute address means it is address in RAM. Okay, so this is the example we have. Okay, now whenever we do binding, each binding maps one address space to another. What is address space to another? So one point from the program to another point from the main memory, it is just going to make the links. Okay, now please understand, we need memory at various parts of the program. When we are compiling, we need the memory. When we are running, we need the memory. When we are doing linking and loading, we need the memory. So in the next slide, we can understand that we need the memory. The binding of the instructions and the data to the memory address happens at 4 different stages. When we compile the program, when we link the program, when we load the program, when we run the program. So you can see the source program, the program which we write in Java. When we compile that, we need a memory, because our program should go into the RAM. Also, maybe we need to have our data to be kept into the RAM. I mean the memory variables. So during this time, we need a memory. So binding happens during compile time. That is number 1. Okay. Now in our program, there might be a link to some other program, some other object modules. So that is actually linking. Like for example, in our program, we have import statement. Import java.io. We make so many import statements, which means we are linking our program to some other Java modules like IO, or maybe we use the scanner class. You remember in Java, you write so many import statements in the beginning of the Java program. So what are these import statements? We need some other modules from Java to be imported into our program. So that is actually the linking. That is the link time. That is the link time. Okay, so we bring other modules, we get the system libraries, and all those things we are going to load. And this is actually our load time. Load time. We are going to load our program into the memory. That time also we need to make the address binding. And finally, our program is now running. That time also we need to have some memory for running the program. So we need to make the binding. So different times we need to make the connections. What is that connection? We take our program, we want to put this program onto RAM. When we do this connection, we need to know the address. We need to know the address where I am going to place. Okay, suppose I am going to place address 0. I am going to place address 110. I am going to place address 120. I am going to place address 125. Like, we need to know the address. This is called as binding. What is binding? Making a connection between our program to the actual address of the computer. It does not happen one time. It happens at various times. Compile time, link time, load time, run time. Okay, so when the source program is compiled, the code of the function provides by the language, that is C or Java, whatever it is, need to be incorporated into object program. I already told you about that. Source program source program will be converted into object program. Okay, so this can be done either statically or dynamically, whatever it is. So we need to make the linking. So the linking happens in two ways: statically, dynamically. Static means in the beginning. In the beginning. Dynamically, when the program is running. Means the program may increase, the program may decrease. We need the memory when the program is running. So you can see here, the linking happens in two ways: statically, dynamically. Static linking done at the link or the load time, which means in the beginning of the program. In the beginning of the program. Dynamic linking happens when the program is running during the run time. Okay, so when we are running the program, some memory is fixed. Some memory is fixed. So this we can do static binding. Static binding. But the runtime, in the runtime, we are doing a dynamic linking. What is dynamic linking? If we want more memory, we need to give it. Okay, so for example, they are giving one example here of the advantages. When we do dynamic linking, there are some advantages. What are they? We can save on the memory space. How? Suppose I am running program 1. Just understand this small example. I am running program 1. Okay, so there is a code which is running. Okay, now we want program 2. I also want the same program. Which is this. Okay, normally if you do static binding, what happens is, suppose this is program a code. I'm just giving one name. Okay, so ABC. Program 2 also want ABC. But because of dynamic linking, what we can do is we don't need two copies of the same thing, because already it is in the memory. I don't need to run this again. So what we can do, program 2 can use this code again one more time. So when we do that, okay, so what is the advantage? Saving on the memory space, because no need to load the same program code 2 times. This program can use the method ABC another time. That's fine. Don't need multiple copies of the same routine. Routine means they say method or the program or the procedure. We need not to load 2 times. Okay, so with the help of that, what is the benefit? Saving on the load time. Only need to load a routine once. No need to load 2 times. So what we are saving? We are saving memory space. We are also saving the load time. Okay, another point. Suppose in this program, there are some errors. In this method, I don't say program, sorry. In this method, there are some errors. If there are 2 copies, updating 2 times is going to be very difficult. Now, if there is any change, just make a change here. You add something or you remove something, only do at one time. So everywhere it is going to be updated automatically. So what is the another advantage? Ease of updating the libraries, fixing the bugs, changing the code, or whatever you are doing, do it only one time. At one location, it will reflect everywhere. So these are all some advantages of dynamic linking. Okay, so that is the advantage. Okay, now we are moving towards the addresses. As I told you, every memory location will be having the address. Every memory location, every part of the program will be having the address. So there are now 2 types of addresses: logical address, physical address. What is logical address? This is the address which is the one referred in the piece of executable code. Okay, for example, memory variables or the location, whatever it is. The CPU executes instructions involving logical address. Okay, means the addresses which we found in the program. Then for every logical address, there will be a physical address. I told you what is physical address. Physical address is actually the real address which is in the memory. Okay, the physical address is the address which is actually sent to the memory unit. which is actually in the memory, the address of the memory. The logical address space of the process starts from 0 to the memory limit of the process. Suppose I have a process, okay, P1 is my process. What is the starting of the address? Starting is 0. What is the limit? What is the maximum? The maximum is the address given for this process. Suppose the address given for this process is 200. So the logical address starts with 0, ends with 200. That is the logical address for this process, 0 to 200, because there is a limit. Now, what is the address of the physical address? Sorry, the limit of the physical address, it starts with 0, and the maximum size is the size of the main memory, that is the size of the RAM. Okay, if I take you back to the picture which I have shown you, so you can see starting with 0, ending with the maximum location, maybe 1 GB or 10 GB, whatever it is. Okay, so that is the maximum location. Okay, this is 1 GB, for example. This is the physical address, starts with 0, ends with 1 GB, for example. What is the logical address? Logical address for this process starts with this location and ends with this location. Means for this, from here to here, that is the maximum location. Okay, so this point is not important to understand. They say there is a limit for the logical address and the physical address. Okay, now the point what we need to know is, we have something called memory management unit. What is the job of the memory management units? It makes the connections between the logical address to the physical address. Means for every process, the logical address need to be mapped or connected to the physical address. Okay, now who is generating the logical address? In the previous slide we have seen the logical address is generated by the CPU. Okay, how now we are discussing one important topic, how a logical address is converted to physical address. Okay, what it does, how it is going on. Okay, it takes the logical address generated by the CPU and adds a number n to compute the physical address. Okay, so what it is going to do, it will take the logical address generated by the CPU and adds a number n to compute the physical address. The number is actually stored in relocation register. This is relocation register. Okay, now I will tell you this process. Okay, I will tell you this process. Okay, so for example, this 14,000 is base. I told you every process has a base address. Okay, now we have a process logical address, process logical address 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. They gave an example here, 346. Now how I will change the logical address to the physical address? I need to take the logical address, okay, and we need to add the logical address to n. What is n? N is base address. N is the base address. Now if you look at the example here, the base address n, I will just put the numbers here. 346 is the logical address and n is equal to 14,000. Now what we need to do, we need to add the logical address to n to get the physical address. So just we need to make the addition here. Okay, so 14,000 plus 346. We need to add this to get the physical address. Now if you can see here, this is the physical address. Okay, suppose I have 1. To convert logical address 1 to the physical address, 14,001. Then to take 2, to convert the logical address to the physical address, we need to add to this. It's going to be 14,002. What is the idea here is, we take the process, we want to put into the memory. We want to say this information will be here. We want to say this information will be here. we want to say this information will be here. So what we need to do, this is the logical address. No, this is the RAM, physical address. We need to make the connection between them. To do that, for every process, I told you, for every process, there will be a starting point. Okay. The starting point, for example, is 100 for this. So this is going to be first location. So this is going to be 101. This is the second location. For example, this is going to be 102. Now this is the third location. This is going to be 103. So what we need to do? We need to change the logical address into physical address. That is called as mapping the logical address into physical address. How? Take the logical address generated by the CPU. This is the logical address 346, for example. Take the logical address generated by the CPU and add that number to n. What is n? N is the base address at the starting point. When we do that, we get the physical address, that is 14,346. As an example, this is the location of the memory. This is the location of the memory. Okay. Now what it does, this information is actually kept into a register in the CPU that is called as a relocation register. To move the process into the memory, what we need to know? We need to know where is this information we need to keep onto the memory. So we need to move the process into the memory, just change the relocation register. So whenever we change, every process will be having the relocation register and it will automatically know which process is kept into which memory. Okay, so this is how logical address will be converted into physical address. Okay, I told you what is runtime binding. Runtime binding is when we are running the program, okay, only we are going to load the modules when they are needed. So runtime binding is useful for saving the memory. Whenever we want, we can load it. Whenever we don't want, we can remove it. Okay, so it allows several processes to share one copy of the module. Already I gave you the example in the previous slide. So where I told you about this of sharing. So this is the example. Okay, so whenever we want, we can load it and same copy can be shared by multiple processes. That is the usefulness of runtime binding. And another point which we have discussed, that is, the CPU cannot access hard disk directly. Okay, so the CPU cannot access the CPU directly. Okay, now what happens is sometimes the process wants more memory. Okay, the process wants more memory. Imagine that we have RAM. Okay, the RAM is now full. The RAM is now full with all the data. We need more data. Now there is more demand for the memory space from process. What we need to do? We need to take the process which we are not using. Okay, understand the point. Suppose we are not using some process. We take the process from here. Okay, we send the process into hard disk. Okay, and when we need it, we can bring the data from hard disk. This is called as swapping. So what we are going to do, while there is more demand for the memory space from process, the process are swapped in and out from the main memory to the backing storage. What is backing storage? Hard disk. Okay, who is going to do the swapping? The swapping is done by memory manager. Remember, I want you to remember these two things. Swapping is done by memory manager. Address binding is done by memory management unit. Both of them are different. Okay, memory management unit is going to do the address binding. There is a memory manager who is going to do the swapping. Okay, so what memory manager does? The memory manager needs to work in sync with the CPU scheduler. When the CPU wants memory, it will give the memory. When the CPU want to make one process free, it will take the process from the main memory, put onto the hard disk. Whenever the CPU wants the process, it will bring the process from the hard disk to main memory. Means the memory manager works in the synchronization with the CPU scheduler. Okay, so leave this point, roll in, roll out. It's going to confuse you. Now I will explain the process of swapping. So now this is the operating system. When we want to swap, okay, so we take the process, we put onto the hard disk. When we need it back, we need to bring that back. Okay, so this is how we need to get it. Okay, let's take a break, a small break. I will not take full points. Okay, I'll just explain 1 or 2 points now, and then we'll stop the lecture. Let's just take a break of 5 minutes. Then we'll come back and discuss about what is the protection and the memory allocation methods. Just 2 points I will discuss for today. Take a break, 5 minutes. Okay, let's complete a few slides to complete the lecture. Now here we are talking about something called protection. Okay, so what is the protection here is just I will put one scenario. Okay, so now in the previous slide, I told you about how the process, I mean this one, how we are going to get the logical address to the physical address. Just remember this point. Okay, so I told you that the logical address will be converted into physical address just by adding the logical address to the base location. Okay, so I'm just giving one example to make you understand another point. Okay, so suppose we have process 1. Okay, so it is now asking for address. Okay, now let's look at the address. This is the address given for process 1. This is the address given for process 2. And now think that, okay, the base address is 100. Example, here the base address is 500. It's already given to P2. Now P1, it's a program, yeah, so it's running. Now whenever it wants address, we need to do address binding. And during this address binding, we need to change the logical address to physical address. How we are doing it? We take the logical address, for example, 1, and suppose the base address here I told you 100. Okay, so we add the logical address to the physical address. So 100 plus 1, 101. Okay, now this is the new physical address 10101 that is here, for example. Okay, so we have another logical address 10. So we add 100 plus 10, it is going to be 110. That is the location here. Okay, so likewise we have another logical address. Okay, so for example 200 is the logical address. So 200 plus 100, that is going to be 300 is the logical address. Suppose 300 is here. Like that, whenever the program wants an address, it has a logical address. We are converting the logical address to physical address, and we are keep on doing it because the process wants memory. The process wants more memory. So it will be asking for the memory. We need to give the memory. So the process asks the memory. We need to give the memory. So we are keep on doing. After some time, suppose after some time, the location here is 100. And this is going to be, for example, 300. For example, 410. Okay, so 410 is the logical address. Now, if I add 410 to the base address, okay, understand, this is the critical point. If I add 100 to the base address, I am going to get 510. 510. Now tell me, can I access the location 510 for process 1?
No.
What is the reason? What is the reason? What is the reason for no? Your understanding is, yes, because of the minimum is I can use up to this location only. Means I can use maybe up to 499 up for process 1. If I am going to use 510, that 510 is here somewhere. That is not my location. My location is I am P1. My location I can access only up to this. I cannot go beyond that. But we did not say anything here in the algorithm. In the algorithm, what we say, just we have the conversion. We just have to take the logical address, add to the physical address, and then add to the add to the base address. We will get the physical address. If you just put this algorithm, this is actually wrong because there is no protection now. There is no protection. So what may happen after some time, as I gave you the example, the process may ask more memory. It may go up to this location also, which means I am now going to some other process which is wrong, totally wrong. We should stop it. How can we stop it? That's the point which is given here in this algorithm. Okay, so memory allocation and protection, how do we do that? Processes are not allowed to access each other's address space, like I gave you in the example. Process 1 has been given address only up to 499. Process 2 can take from 500 to, for example, up to 1000. This is the maximum for process 2. They cannot use each other's address space. Okay, so processes are not allowed to access each other's address space, except special cases when they are sharing. Otherwise, they are not allowed to share. Now, how to limit this? Okay, so what we can do is, when we want to change the logical address to the physical address, we did not discuss this previously. We have a logical address, we add the logical address to the base address, we will get the physical address. Now, we put a condition here. We put a condition here in the limit register. Now, my limit is, for example, only 499. That is my limit. That is my limit. So this information will be kept in the limit register. Each process will be having the limit. Now, when I change the logical address to the physical address, it will check this condition. Okay, in the previous example, I have 510. Is 510 less than 499? If it is yes, it will change the logical address to the physical address. Now, in this example, 510 is not less than 499. It is more than that. So, it is no. Then what happens? There will be a trap. Trap means error. Error. So, we will get a trap, or we'll get a message that addressing error. What is that error? It will say that you are trying to use the memory location of another process. This is how we can apply protection between the process. We can apply the protection between the process. So what do we do? Whenever we change the logical address to the physical address, here we are going to check the limit. Is it within the limit? If it is yes, you change the logical address to the physical address. Otherwise, you stop it and say that it is not under your limit. Okay, so that is how we add this extra thing that we call it as a limit register. Each process has an associated relocation register plus limit register, and if they access another process memory, there will be a trap. There will be a error, which is addressing error. I hope you understand the point. So with one last point, I will complete the lecture for today. That is, how are we going to allocate the memory to the process? Okay, suppose imagine we have memory. The memory, for example, 2000. Just I'm giving an example. Okay, 2000 KB of memory I have. And I have process 1, process 2, process 3, process 4. Now I have 4 processes and I have 2000 KB of memory. How are we going to allocate the memory? Now this is the point we are going to discuss, memory allocation. Now there are 2 methods of memory allocation. Okay, one is contiguous. Contiguous means what? Continuous. I will give simple words for you to remember. Continuous. Okay, the second method is non-contiguous. Remember, continuous means the memory should be in same location. Continuous. Non-contiguous means one part of the memory here, another part of the memory here, another part of the memory. We can use the memory wherever it is free. Wherever it is free. That is called as a non-contiguous memory. But today we are just going to see about contiguous memory location. Okay, in the contiguous memory location also, there are 2 methods. One is a simple method. Second one is little bit complex method. Okay, so what is that? First of all, the point is process wants memory. How can we give the memory? First method, continuous. What is continuous? We need to give the memory to the process continuously. So process 1 will be given continuous memory locations. Okay, now that is one method. It wants memory in same location, means continuous, one after the other. Second method is one part of the memory we can use it from here, another part of the memory we can use it here, but we can make a link between them. That is non-continuous or non-contiguous. Okay, so we'll discuss about this later. Today we'll see continuous. What is contiguous memory location? Process will be given the memory in the same location. Okay, so there are two methods, simple, complex. Let us understand. What is simple method? Simple method, divide the memory into number of fixed size portions. Okay, so I gave you the example here. We have the memory. Suppose this is 40 KB. 40 KB memory. 4 process wants the memory. So what we did, we divide them into 4 portions of 10K, 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 10K. Okay, and each process will be given the memory. Now, they say there are some problems in this fixed size portion, fixed size partition. There are some problems in this. What is the first problem? They call it as internal fragmentation. So what is internal fragmentation is, okay, I will give you a small point to explain. Internal fragmentation means, suppose we divide the memory into 3 portions. Okay, so this is, I want to take a big example. Okay, so 300 KB, 300 KB, 300 KB. So 3 I divided. Process 1 wants 300 KB. That's fine, no problem with this. Process 2 wants 10 KB. Okay, now look at this. Process 2 wants 10 KB. We are giving 300 KB. What we are doing here? Can you tell me? What we are doing here? Are we utilizing the memory properly, or are we wasting the memory? Okay, I will tell you another example, easy example. Okay, so there are 3 teachers, teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3. Okay, I am teaching 25 students. Another teacher is teaching 5 students. Another teacher is teaching 25 students. Now we have classrooms. Okay, all the classrooms have same size. Okay, imagine. Okay, now imagine this teacher has 35 students. Now imagine the classrooms in the college, all of them are 25. All of them are 25. Teacher number 1 will be happy because teacher number 1 wants 25 students. The classroom is 25. This is okay for teacher number 1. Teacher number 2 is given a classroom of 25. He wants how many seats? He wants only 5. What about the remaining 20? What about the remaining 20 chairs or the seats? They are wasted. Are you understanding my point? Teacher number 3, 35 students, but in the class there are only 25 chairs. Can teacher number 3 take the class? Can teacher number 3 take the class?
No.
No. Okay,
No.
if you tell me about teacher number 2, teacher number 2 is going to waste a lot of space in the college, yes or no? In the class.
Yes.
In the same way, if you look at my example here, we divide the memory into 300K, 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 but process 2 wants only just 10K. Process 2 wants just only 10K, small portion. Remaining 290K is wasted. Now this extra memory which we are giving to the process, even if it is not needed, is called as internal fragmentation. It is called as internal fragmentation. Remember that. Okay. So what is the problem? If you divide the process into same, there is a problem of internal fragmentation. What is internal fragmentation? The process may waste lot of memory unnecessarily. Okay. Now, another problem is I told you about teacher 3. Okay. Suppose there is a process 3, it wants 400 KB. But process 3 does not have memory because it needs the memory continuously, because this method is actually contiguous memory. It wants the memory in the same location. So process 3 will not work because no memory. No memory. Now, what is the complex method? Okay, what is the complex method? I will not explain completely about this. What is the complex method is, in the memory, each memory location is called as a hole. So this is a hole, one location. When a process arrives, we find the hole big enough to put onto that. What do you mean by hole here? Maybe 10 KB, one hole. Maybe 200 KB, one hole. Means each portion of the memory is called as a hole, and each hole of different size. One may be 100 KB, one may be 200 KB, one may be 400 KB, one may be 50 KB. Like, we have different sizes of holes. Okay, so when the process arrives, we find the hole big enough to put onto that. Suppose we get a process 1, okay, and it wants only 5 KB. Unlike previously, now we will search. Okay, so what we want 5 KB. 5 KB can put onto this hole number 1. Okay, we'll put onto that. It's fine for that. Suppose I get a process of 200 KB. So I can take the process, I can put onto this particular hole. Okay, now what is the concept here? If the hole is bigger than the process, we keep the record of the new smaller hole. We are not going to waste the memory. Okay, so here I told you that 500 KB I am going to put onto 10 KB. Remaining 10 KB is another hole. Now we got a new hole. Here we use only one. We got another hole of 5 KB, smaller hole. Okay, so that is one particular kind of concept which we are going to understand. Okay, so there are 3 algorithms for doing this. I will not explain about the algorithms today because I need to give you the examples also. Today I will stop with this point. Next lecture, I mean on Monday when we come back, I will continue from here, because I told you that we need to find the hole. We need to find the hole bigger than the process. Sorry, when the process comes, we need to find the hole to put onto the memory. So to do that, there are 3 methods: first fit, best fit, worst fit. What are they? I will explain in the coming class. I will give you some examples. This is another important topic for the exam. Another important topic. In the past exams, there were some questions based upon this topic. Okay, so that's why I'm not in a hurry to complete it today. So next class, when we come back, we are going to discuss about that. Okay, so I will stop with that for today. Next class, when we come back, I will discuss about these algorithms, and we will see the other portions of the lecture. Okay, so I will stop with that for today.